The cover-up in Ukraine is getting worse, and these politicians are trying to cover their tracks before it's truly exposed. Back in 2018, something happened in the United States Congress, and it didn't get much coverage. In fact, it was largely ignored. A little noticed provision was hidden inside of a 2,232-page government spending bill. They're very large. No wonder it was ignored. Who's reading this? Because the military-industrial complex runs Congress, and military spending bills are often ignored in the media and on Capitol Hill because everyone falls in line, lockstep, and they pass these weapons bills. No one asks any questions. But on this day, in 2018, there was an anomaly. Something didn't go as planned. What was the reason? Well, you see, this little simple paragraph was slipped into the bill. Yes, a tiny little paragraph that had incredibly profound consequences. It actually passed and was approved by Congress. But this isn't the first time. This little paragraph was included in 3 previous spending bills since 2015. This little paragraph tried to make its way into the spending bill by some brave members of Congress. Each time, though, it was removed, deleted, but not this time. You see, since 2015 and the overthrow of the Ukrainian government and the installation of a puppet regime, the United States government had been funneling millions of dollars in weapons to the Ukrainian military under the guise of protection. So for 3 years, and each of these spending bills as they came to the table, there was a tiny paragraph that was included, but it kept getting removed and deleted. But on March 28th of 2018, that paragraph somehow managed to make it through and passed Congress. It was included in the $1.3 trillion spending bill. So what did this paragraph say? Here it is. It said, quote, "None of the funds made available by this act may be used to provide arms, training, or other assistance to the Azov battalion." Yes, Congress had to include a paragraph that made sure all of these weapons were not getting into the hands of neo-Nazi-led Azov battalion in Ukraine. But there's just one problem, as we've reported on here in this show. It was well known at the time that the Azov battalion wasn't some fringe group made up of only a few people. No, in fact, the neo-Nazi Azov battalion and their soldiers were a major part of the entire Ukrainian military at every level. Again, not just some fringe battalion made up of volunteers. In fact, Congressman Ro Khanna, who serves the 17th District of California, was outspoken at the time, was one of the few congressional voices actually pushing to make sure that the American tax dollars weren't going to Nazis. Quote, "White supremacy and neo-Nazism are unacceptable and have no place in our world. I'm very pleased that the recently passed omnibus spending bill prevents the United States from providing arms and training assistance to the neo-Nazi Azov battalion fighting in Ukraine," end quote. Congress had been trying to get this paragraph in the spending bill since 2015, but we all remember what happened in 2015. If you need a refresher, here it is. U.S. senators traveling to Ukraine, meeting with the Ukrainian paramilitary, telling them that we are going to be sending lots of weapons to you. Here they are.
2017 will be the year of offense. All of us will go back to Washington and we will push the case against Russia.
Ми всі повернемося до Вашингтону і ми будемо відстоювати санкції проти Росії.
Enough of a Russian aggression.
Досить вже російської агресії.
It is time for them to pay a heavier price.
So to be clear, starting just after that visit, Congress removed this paragraph about money and weapons going to Nazis 3 different times. They removed this paragraph. They went in and cut it 3 times. Imagine being the congressman who did that. Like, "Hey, honey, how was your day at work today? What'd you do?" "Well, I went into a spending bill and, we continue to funnel money to Nazis and I removed a paragraph that would have stopped us from doing that." "You did, honey? So wait a minute, you're still sending money to Nazis?" "Yeah. What's for dinner?" In 2017, the Azov battalion posted videos showing their soldiers in Ukraine using US-made grenade launchers. Those videos were later removed and the Ukrainian National Guard issued a statement saying, "All good here, nothing to see. We made sure those grenade launchers were not in the possession of the Azov battalion any longer." Okay, nothing to see. All good, right? In 2018, U.S. military leaders were caught meeting with the neo-Nazi group in Ukraine. This is a photo from 2018. U.S. military leader on the left of your screen, Nazis on the right of your screen. Of course, this begs the question, why would Congress have to put a paragraph like this in their spending bill anyway? After all, tens of thousands of Americans lost their lives fighting Nazis to liberate Europe in World War II. Wouldn't we already have something on the books, something like some sort of a law, a vetting process perhaps, that keeps the United States from sending money and weapons to white supremacists, neo-Nazis? And the answer actually is yes, we do. It's called the Leahy Law, named after Vermont Senator Patrick Leahy, and it prevents the United States from sending aid to any group that the Secretary of State has credible information that such a unit has committed a gross violation of human rights. So if you're on this human rights violation list, you don't get money from the United States Congress, kind of. So we are not allowed to send money and weapons and other aid to groups that the Secretary of State's office has already deemed violators of human rights, which of course brings up the next question. Did the Secretary of State's office at the time already recognize the Ukrainian military Azov Battalion as violators of human rights? And the answer actually may surprise you. The answer is no, not officially, in fact. In fact, in 2018, their report, which you can very easily access on the State Department's website right now if you like, you'll see that most of eastern Ukraine is exempted from their human rights violation report in an area heavily controlled by the Azov Battalion. But interestingly, the State Department did recognize that the Ukrainian Security Service, the SBU, is known to torture, disappear individuals, arbitrary detention without due process, and other human rights violations are committed by the SBU. They are also responsible for the 2014 Maidan shootings in Kyiv. And they also are the very people that, regardless of the Azov Battalion, continue to receive money and support from the United States government. Also, this same group, the SBU, is responsible for grabbing Gonzalo Lira, journalist Gonzalo Lira, who had been reporting on the corrupt Zelensky regime. The SBU took him against his will, held him for 7 days, forced him to sign a non-disclosure agreement to silence him. But we continue to send money to them. Now, you would think with this new provision added to this omnibus spending bill that the money and the weapons would stop flowing to Ukraine, knowing that they're being run by neo-Nazis. All the money and weapons would stop. But the money and the weapons continue to flow to these Nazis. And there was growing concern from some members of Congress at the time that they were actively recruiting American soldiers to join their ranks in Ukraine. In fact, in October of 2019, a full 1 year after Congress said that we're no longer going to send money to these neo-Nazi groups, Max Rose, who chaired the counterterrorism subcommittee at the time, submitted a letter to the State Department co-signed by 39 members of Congress. It urged, among other things, for the department to designate the Azov Battalion as a terrorist organization in the same fashion as Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Interestingly, that letter has been deleted from the internet. It's hard to find. In that letter, that, quote, the Azov movement has been recruiting, radicalizing, and training American citizens for years. Of course, the common refrain today from people who are looking to cover the story up is that simply the Azov Battalion is a small group of fringe Nazis. They don't represent the larger Ukrainian military, but that's wrong. In fact, Foreign Policy magazine, which would love nothing more than a full-blown war with Russia, wrote at the time, in October of 2019, in a piece criticizing Max Rose. They wrote this, quote, the Azov Battalion was founded in 2014 to help defend Ukraine against Russian-led proxy forces. It also quickly became known as a place where foreign far-right extremists could make themselves at home. Almost 6 years later, Azov has expanded into a multi-pronged movement with a political party, a street militia, and dozens of affiliated smaller organizations. The military unit is now under the auspices of Ukraine's National Guard and properly known as the Azov Regiment. It's why in Rose's letter referring to the Azov as simply the Azov Battalion is not only technically incorrect, but displays a lack of understanding about the movement itself. So let's get this right. In Foreign Policy magazine, in their attempt to discredit Congresswoman Rose's letter, they actually unwittingly revealed the size and the scope of the Nazi group, that it wasn't some small fringe group. It's a political movement. It's a street militia. It's a full-fledged regiment, actively recruiting other foreign extremists, and yes, from the United States and the United Kingdom. But we've been reporting on this show that the U.S. is continuing to funnel money and weapons to the Azov Battalion. And now we have our first confirmed American soldier killed in Ukraine. The truth is coming out, guys. And the United States is complicit in this funding of Nazis in Ukraine. Guys, be sure to subscribe to the channel. It really, really helps. And also make sure you hit that like button. It also pushes this information when you do that out to other people that need to see it. We'll be back here tomorrow.